Coming up, Debbie and I here for our Friday roundup, and there's a lot to talk about, from how Trump is crippling the corrupt infrastructure of the left, how the Biden regime let oil companies duck sanctions against Venezuela, a terrorist doctor who got deported, crime stories involving conjugal visits and incriminating selfies, and this is not a joke, the world's first millennial saint. If you're watching on YouTube, X, or Rumble, listening on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscribe or follow or the notifications button. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Debbie and I are geared up for our Friday roundup, but you want me to disclose that this is in fact a pre-taped podcast.
Yes,
right?
In case, and it always happens this way, there's breaking news and people are like, what happened? Why aren't they talking about it? So that's why. Because we are taking our anniversary trip to a place where we have not been able to go for the last 4 years. It seems that every time we were set to go, something would happen.
Well, one time...
2 times was COVID.
Was COVID related.
They canceled on us because of COVID.
Right.
And then last year, sadly, my mom was going into was in the hospital, and we couldn't go. I mean, I wasn't going to leave her side.
So you were saying that if we don't make it this time, it's an omen, and we're destined
sign.
Never to
go there again.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not going to say where we're going. Let's just say it's not a super far trip. It's not like Australia.
Well,
but
one of the things we've done, and it's mainly because of the podcast, is we don't do, with the rare exceptions, long trips. Now we have a trip coming up in April. We're going to Israel for filming, but that's a work trip. Generally, we do our getaways, which are essentially a sort of stretched out weekend, right? And that's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We have a whole bunch of interesting items to talk about, and I've picked topics that by and large are very, they're perennial. They're topics that are part of the infrastructure of our political debate. They're not going away. The first one is, there's an in-depth article in the New York Times about, it says, with orders, investigations, and innuendo, Trump and the GOP aim to cripple the left. And essentially the article is arguing that from going after Democratic law firms, fundraising organizations, NGOs, that what you have is a coordinated campaign to figure out how the left gets its money and also how it organizes its operations, and essentially to paralyze the left. Now, honestly, this is stuff that the Democrats do all the time, right? And we've been talking now for some years about we need to do the same thing. And so, but it's so predictable that when Trump and the Trumpsters, for the first time, by the way, they did none of this in 2016. There was no such campaign. But when they do it now, it strikes all these alarm bells, because it's supposed to be a one-way thing. Democrats do it to us. We never do it to them. That, of course, was the way that, let's say, the 2 Bushes operated. But and the other thing that's interesting is that in the article, our friend Scott Walter, who is the president of the Capital Research Center, is quoted. He is apparently the guy who is like tracking the money trail, right? And so he was evidently in the White House, or in the at least part of the administration, and giving them briefings about this is where the money flows. This is, Arabella Advisors.
Well,
these are the NGOs.
He was very instrumental in helping us with, was it Police State?
Police State,
yeah.
yeah.
So he was...
Well, he was, and actually, no, it was 2,000 Mules.
Oh, that's right.
Remember,
that's right.
What he was doing is, in 2,000 Mules, the unanswered question was, where does the money come from?
That's right.
You cannot have an organized operation without money. And Scott has been looking at the way in which money from liberal billionaires But I think the new thing that we're learning is that a lot of the money of the left doesn't even come from the liberal billionaires and doesn't even come from Soros. It comes from the government itself. So
the racket they pull with the
well,
NGOs or what? Yeah.
Right. So what happens is, let's say, for instance, Soros will go to a bunch of these Democratic congressmen or prominent officials in the government, and their wives and their son-in-laws all set up NGOs. Right now, Soros will fund those NGOs. He'll give them $100,000 each. But then the NGOs apply for millions of dollars of government money. And when they get it, they start funding their own relatives. They start putting it back into the political campaigns of the left. So the left is getting them the money so that they can recycle some of it back. And this is really what is being busted. If you want to know why the left is
freaking
these
out.
cuts are devastating, like these cuts are devastating, what they mean is,
for them,
we've created an ecosystem that's extremely profitable. Wow. And notice, by the way, that, and this is really, I think, how the never-Trumpers fit in with the Democrats. By and large, the Democrats have said to the never-Trumpers or the never-Trump regime, you can have the foreign policy part of this pie. Because think about it, when you look at the federal budget, right, about 2/3 of it, well, there's also interest on the debt. But not counting interest on the debt, a big chunk goes to domestic programs, and then a somewhat smaller chunk, but still pretty big, goes to defense. So think of it. If you basically say the left and the Democrats get to exploit the domestic programs and loot the taxpayer that way, and then the never-Trump organizations get to loot the taxpayer on the defense side, there's something in it for everybody.
Yeah, which could explain, too, why Zelensky said he doesn't know where the money is, right?
Yeah, he said, you supposedly have given me, and yeah, he quoted the number. I think it was something like, it was a giant number. And he only got a fraction of it. Now we know why. And I think but I think what he was saying applies to everything. It applies to, well, USAID. I just saw a video of an African official, this black woman from one of the African countries, and she was saying, hey, listen, we keep hearing about how USAID is helping our country, it's saving our country, it's solving poverty, it's curing diseases. She goes, we have plenty of poverty, we have plenty of disease. She goes, most of that money doesn't even get to us.
Well, I mean, look, think about it. Just think about that statement, and then look at the inner cities in our own country, right?
Right.
So it's the same kind of racket. What's going on? Why aren't the Democrats really fighting poverty?
Because, and look, the way you can tell if a program has massive waste is simply this. Just take the gross amount of money in the program and divide it by the number of supposed beneficiaries. So let's say, for example, the homeless, right? In San Francisco, you will have hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have something like 12,000 homeless people. Right? So you take the hundreds of millions of dollars, divide it by 12,000, and you realize you could actually move all these guys into very comfortable apartments. In fact, have them have catered meals every day. They would be living at the upper middle class level, if not affluent. But of course, most of that money doesn't get to them. There is an industry of homeless servicing that is bigger than 12,000 people. And those are the people sponging off the money as it supposedly makes its way toward the homeless. That is what the Democrats are protecting. They're protecting the middleman industry.
That's crazy to me. And you know what's also crazy to me is that, here we are with Elon Musk, who is really, by all accounts, the most successful entrepreneur on the planet. He wants nothing in return at all. He's not giving any Republican anything in return at all. He's just fighting corruption. He's fighting, any of these programs that are just defrauding the government. And yet, look what is being done to him. Why didn't we do this to Soros? Why didn't we do this to Soros? Because we're not that kind of people. That's why.
Yeah, here's a little indication of Elon Musk, because I watched the part of this All In podcast, and I was listening to this guy who was talking about Musk, and his name is Chamath, and he was saying, he's like, if you go to Elon Musk's office, he goes, first of all, it's really small. Second of all, it's almost entirely empty. He goes, there's a desk, there's like a computer, a bunch of cables coming out of it. So it's small, it's unsightly, it's entirely devoted to work. And when I was listening to this guy talk about it, it reminded me of something that our friend Jerry Molen once told us. Jerry Molen, legendary producer in Hollywood, now, of course, very advanced in age, but winner of 2 Academy Awards. And he was the producer of the first film, 2016 Obama's America, also America, Imagine a World with Us. So he was involved with us quite actively in our early films. Anyway, he would describe the culture of Hollywood, where these Hollywood moguls, when they get a new job, he's like, they come in over the weekend and start measuring the size of their office. They look at the quality of the furnishings and the drapes, because they measure their status by, is my office, I'm over at Disney. Is my office bigger than the other guy at Creative Artists? So, and contrast this with Elon Musk.
Well, corporate America does the same thing. I mean, if your office is overlooking something, it's got windows, that's, how far you've come in the company, right? If you were in a cubby, well, you're just a peon. But if you have an office with windows and, a great view, you're really making it in that company.
It's totally a measure of status. Yeah, no, totally right. Let's talk about Dr. Rasha Alaway, a kidney transplant specialist and Brown University professor. According to the New York Times, she had a valid visa, but nevertheless was expelled or deported from the country. It goes on to say she's a Lebanese citizen, and she traveled to her home country to visit relatives, but when she came back, she was detained and she was deported.
And what else did she do?
Right. So that's
what they don't want you to know.
Exactly. I was just going to say, you can read down the article paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and you don't get it, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to go way down to the bottom where you realize that this woman is an avid
Hezbollah supporter.
Avid supporter of Hezbollah. And not only that, isn't it a fact?
She went to the funeral.
She went to the funeral of, was it Nasrallah?
I believe is the leader of
the leader of Hezbollah.
That's right.
Now, that does not, unless I'm missing something, that does not even appear in this article.
Yeah,
So we see here the way in which media is manipulated, and very often the manipulation is by exclusion.
Yeah.
Don't say anything.
Well, and
don't mention it.
That's just it. The headline is like, oh my gosh, we're deporting a doctor who is saving lives.
Listen to this. Quote, there is a shortage of American doctors working in Dr. Alloway's area of specialty, transplant nephrology.
That's right.
Foreign-born physicians play an important role in the field, according to experts. So they're acting like this is a straight out case of a highly competent doctor. But I don't know if you saw the thing on CNN where you had a bunch of panelists, and at one point they were confronted with the fact, hey, listen, whatever, and all of them looked very dismayed about all this. They were all acting like this is outrageous. And then the host pointed out, she goes, these deportations are extremely popular. 63% of Americans, and think about what that means. That means a significant minority of Democrats favor these deportations. I saw even Bernie Sanders was saying, he was interviewed and somebody asked him, what's the one good thing that Trump has done, if you had to say? He goes, well, deportations. He goes, removing people from the country who don't belong. And Bernie Sanders, of all people, we don't trust this at all. And I'm sure he's only saying it now because, although Bernie in his early career used to be against illegal immigration, mainly because of the impact of it on the salaries of working people in the country.
Oh, right.
So Bernie's socialism was a kind of American socialism.
Yeah, until they discovered that in order to become socialist, they have to include all these illegals.
That, or either that, or it was a straight out, Bernie, listen, you currently have one house. Would you like to have two? You currently have two. Would you like to have three? Okay, you need to modify your position on this issue. And because we've seen Bernie just obliges. All you have to do is give him a house, and he will go along. But he's not unique in the Democrats in that way.
No, not at all.
Debbie and I care about our health, and we've come across a remarkable device that is a total game changer. We use it every day. We love it. It's called Juvent Micro Impact Platform. It's based on the latest cutting-edge science. It uses micro-impact frequency to promote joint health, improve bone density, boost circulation, and even stimulate the production of stem cells in your body. Crazy, right? But it works. All you have to do is stand on it. I do it for about 10 or 12 minutes a day, Debbie a little longer, and that's it. It's going to make those crinks and stiffness and aches and pains vanish, and it can even add up to 5 years to your life. Wow. You got to learn about this new technology, which is not to be confused with some gimmicky vibration plates out there. Go to juvent.com/Dinesh to learn more. That's JUVENT.com/Dinesh. They've got a great deal for you right now. $500 off, 10-year warranty, financing options, even a 6-week buyback promise because they believe in the product so much. Juvent can change your life. Check it out. Learn more. Go to juvent.com/Dinesh. Numbers don't lie. The impact that balance of nature makes every single day is pretty astounding. You can see the numbers for yourself on their website. Go to balanceofnature.com. Check it out. Listen to a few stats concerning Balance of Nature's worldwide success. More than 1,000 success stories reported each month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide. Millions of orders delivered each year. And billions, yes, billions of these. These are fruits and veggies in a capsule, fruit and veggie supplements consumed by people who have decided to start living better. Now, there's only one number missing here, and that's you. Do what I did. Add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature's whole food supplements like so many others around the world. And here's another number that might get your attention, 35%. Use my discount code. It's America. You get 35% off plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. Call 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751. Or go to balanceofnature.com. When you use discount code America, you get 35% off and also free shipping. Do you think that there is a free speech issue here with these Hezbollah, these advocates of, whether it's Mahmoud Khalil? You think it's perfectly fine to evacuate them?
I think if you come to this country and you espouse hatred towards America and you support Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, any other terrorist organization, you should be at the very least kicked out of this country, if not incarcerated.
And you're saying, but obviously there are lots of American citizens, right, leftists, who hate America. They are.
Well, I wish we could deport them too. In fact, I think some of them self-deported, if I'm not mistaken.
Rosie
O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres. They self-deported.
I didn't realize Ellen had also self-deported.
Yeah, she self-deported to England.
I did see Rosie giving a recent interview, and I had to chuckle. I mean, a lot of times when I watch these things, I turn off the volume because you know what she's going to say. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is she looks now like an Irishman, and I actually mean an Irish man.
Well, she is Irish. Oh, man.
Yeah, she actually looks like she's
man.
wearing a sort of an, I don't, maybe it's just the way she dresses, but she seems to be wearing like an Irish costume. And didn't you tell me she's moved into a quite conservative?
So yeah, I was reading on social media, and somebody wrote down one of the comments was, "Too bad for Rosie. She lives in one of the most conservative places in Ireland."
So you think she unwittingly?
I don't think she knows that.
Right. Exactly.
I don't think she knows that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but she self-deported, as did Ellen. Ellen just sold her house in L.A. and is now living in England. So yeah, I'm all for self-deportation. Because, quite frankly, it's kind of difficult to deport U.S. citizens, right?
Well, difficult, it's impossible.
It's impossible. So if they want to leave, bye-bye.
It's been dead silence from Robert De Niro. I've been waiting to see, is De Niro going to is he going to move to Corleone, Italy, or someplace else? I think he's just lying low. But he's...
what's really sad is that a lot of these dummies, Hollywood people that are like, how much I absolutely detest Sean Penn. I mean, I can't stand him, right? Yeah. So if I'm like browsing to see what movie I want to see, and a movie pops up and I'm like, oh, this, and then I see Sean Penn
You just won't
I'm
watch
like,
it.
I will not watch it. And
Yeah.
now it's the same with De Niro. I don't want, and he's an incredible actor.
He's
So
a
his
really good
movies,
actor.
most of the movies he does are really good, but I just
Well,
don't
he
want
has
to.
a remarkable range. I mean, in other words, it's one thing to play a gangster, all right, and you can play a gangster, but he can also do comedy.
Oh,
His
I know.
sense of
I
timing
know.
is really
It's
good.
too bad. It really is too bad.
And I was very surprised
My-
how well he played.
So Juliana sent me this clip because she calls me Debbie Downer.
yeah,
And there's apparently a Debbie Downer on Saturday Night Live. We don't watch Saturday Night Live, but there's a
Right.
clip of Debbie Downer serving alcohol. She was like a bartender, and she was really pooping on everybody's parade, because they were drinking, and she thought it was so funny because I do the same thing. But Robert De Niro pops in, and the minute he gets in there and starts, chatting, I'm like, I'm done. Click.
The other guy, and it's a strange experience for us because we do consume some popular culture,
Mhm.
and as you know, for example, I like the comedian Bill Burr. Now, you don't like him that much.
I can't stand the man.
Yeah,
Can't
but
stand him.
he's very good on the
Yeah, I know you like
feminism
him.
issue, and he's in fact he's almost like he's got almost a kind of patent on that issue.
Yeah, but he hates white people.
He hates white people, and the strange thing is he's
white.
now. He's now railing against Elon Musk, but in the most clumsy, ineffective way, and he's all the iconoclasm and kind of surprising, inventive wit that made him famous seems to be gone. Somehow when these guys get political, it's all stripped away.
No, it really is. And what's really funny is that it's not always so much when they get political.
Yeah.
It's when they become activists
Right.
on stage.
Right.
That's when I have a problem. If, for example, we saw John Lovitz in Vegas a couple years ago.
Right.
He was political,
Right.
but he was hysterically funny because he dissed it out on both sides.
Right.
He wasn't one-sided I guess you could argue he was not.
He was right of center, but in fairness, he also had some jibes against Trump.
He did.
It doesn't matter if a guy has a point of view.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was always a big fan of George Carlin, who had a point of view, and his point of view was not mine.
He was a leftist.
He was a leftist.
Yeah.
He was very much. He was an atheist.
Mhm.
Remember his whole thing about
That's right.
the Ten Commandments.
Mhm.
He was also, in a way, he was very anti-corporate,
Mhm.
and by that I mean we are anti-corporate in a certain way.
Now, I forget, was he also anti-climate change or was he pro-climate
No,
change?
no, he thought climate change was a hoax.
Was a joke. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that was a rare case where
Yes.
Carlin explicitly took the right side of the
That's right.
on an issue. But that's my point. It's like Carlin sort of was like, I'm going to give you a point of view,
Mhm.
and I'm going to go for it. And he was interesting even
Mhm.
when he was
And funny. Yeah,
and he would have insightful
Yeah.
observations.
So Bill Burr, when he goes political, is not funny. In fact, he's repulsive.
Yeah,
He really
yeah,
is.
That's true. That's true. Here's an article in the New York Post. Trump fights vile judicial push. This is by our friend Miranda Devine. And she's talking about this coordinated campaign by these judges. Now, there are some people on the MAGA right who thinks that Trump should just ignore these judges. And the reasoning being that, hey, listen, I'm the head of the executive branch. Read the Constitution. I have this executive authority. You are engaging in judicial usurpation in shutting me down. Why should I even listen to you? I'm going to appeal. But in the meantime, you can't take away my time as president by essentially just shutting down my initiatives one after the other. Otherwise, essentially, you're the president and not me. What do you think about this notion? Should Trump just forge ahead, ignore these judges? Or is it the case where, guess what? You know what? We kind of have to play. We have to play along because this is our system. However twisted it is.
It is twisted, and I do think that these judges are doing this to line up an impeachment for Trump. So I do think that if Trump ignores them, that this will be what the Democrats will then use against Trump.
So you're saying that even if they are overturned on appeal, the point will be that they are the law until such time as they are overturned on appeal. And therefore, Trump was, quote, violating the law.
Exactly. So
By
I think
not-
he needs to be a little careful, only because the left's dream has been to like get rid of him for, for how many years now? 8 years now.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not going to stop. And these judges are part of it. They're part of it. So they're very clever, these people. I still, I would like to figure out exactly how they do what they do, because we need to do exactly what they do. Always.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a couple of examples where judges on the right shut down, let's say, Biden initiatives. But it was few and far between. I mean, here's a really good example. You have judges that have shut Trump down on the border.
And the media, like, blamed them, like was focused on how bad they were. Yeah, how bad they were, like, usurping Biden, right?
Yeah.
And this time it's the other way around.
Well, look at the one-sidedness, right? The same judges who are saying to Trump, you cannot close down the border and deport these people, were dead silent when Biden was doing the exact opposite.
That's
so what was
right.
Biden doing? He opened the border and he was inviting the criminals, the terrorists in, and making it easy for them to get in. And where were these judges?
They weren't there because they were part of it. I told you.
Right. And so what happens here, in other words, is it's like they keep chanting rule of law, but
no,
there's a lawlessness underlying this, because what they really mean is the law is what we say.
Exactly.
It is. It's not something that is objectively written down. It's almost like saying the multiplication tables are what we say it is.
That's right.
It's not 7 times 8 is not 56. It may be 56 depending on which judge is ruling on it.
That's right. And depending on who the president is, right?
And depending on who the president is.
So that's, to me, these activist judges. I mean, we don't have activist judges. That's just it. Look at all of the judges that were appointed by Trump, who basically were like violating the rights of all the J6ers. Think of that.
There was that, and not to mention, even on the Supreme Court, you could hardly say, for example, let's look at the 3 Trump appointees. You have Amy Coney Barrett, you have Kavanaugh, and who's the third? Gorsuch?
Gorsuch.
Okay, none of them are rubber stamps for Trump. None of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you can pretty much count on Kagan and Ketanji Jackson to be rubber stamps for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Trump judges, they're like, let's read the Constitution. Let's look and see what it actually says. Let's apply the original intentions of the framers. So this is a case where our side follows the script, and their side are basically good Democrats.
They are.
They're loyal to the ideology of the left.
Very loyal.
All right. White House made reverse decision to kill Biden-Maduro oil deal. So evidently, this is pretty interesting, because the abuses of power by Maduro are so obvious that the U.S. has sanctions, right? And the sanctions were even there under Biden. But the Biden administration wanted to find a way to go around the sanctions. Now, I'm a little surprised, because they were doing it for Chevron. I don't know if it's because they have some kind of deal with Chevron, or if it is the case that they were worried about gas prices. Remember that part of what was coming up in the election were egg prices, gas prices, grocery prices. So they might have figured, listen, we got to bring these prices down. How do we bring them down? Well, Maduro will not let Chevron tap Venezuelan oil unless Chevron pays all these royalties to him. But the royalties are not allowed under the sanctions. So the Biden administration figured out, how can we get an exception so that Chevron can continue to tap Venezuelan oil and continue to pay Maduro? So this is how the Democrats posture one way while they're operating a whole different way. They did this, by the way, they've done this with banks. They'll be like, we're against the big banks. We're gonna call the banks to heel. We've got all these agencies that protect the consumer. But in the meantime, they're making deals with the banks. And then, of course, you know, as well as I do, how Obama did this with the insurance companies under Obamacare.
AIG.
We're against the insurance companies. We're gonna make sure that their prices are under heel. And instead, Obama's meeting in the back room with the insurance companies and cutting deals with them so that they can make more profits than ever.
That's right. Yeah. And so in effect, insurance is more expensive than ever.
and it's a mess. The
Yeah.
whole and not only is it a mess, but and here we have to blame Justice Roberts in part, but it's very
In
hard to
part,
undo, right?
oh.
This is a program that went through on one vote.
Oh,
And there was a perfectly good grounds to strike it down. But again, coming back to your point about how our judges are, they not only play by the rules, they're like, let me help you, Obama.
they kind of bended the rules.
Right. It's
you
kind of
know?
like, listen, right. You're calling it a mandate. We will redefine it as a tax. And by
Yes.
redefining it as a tax, we
It's
can now
okay.
hold that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
constitutional.
Yeah. Can you
Wow.
believe that? I can't believe it.
I can believe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Now, with regard to Maduro, you've been making the point that there is no hope for Venezuela under the Democrats.
Zero.
Right? Zero. And it's because the tyranny of Maduro is their type of tyranny.
That's
It's
right.
the tyranny of the left.
Tyranny of the left.
So you can no more count on the United States doing anything against Maduro than the Democrats would do anything against
well, I
Cuba.
mean, this was the same with, Jimmy Carter, wink, wink, with Hugo Chavez. These Democrats, and this is why I always told people, why do you think that the Venezuelan dictators love the Democrats? Why? Why do you think they hated all of the Republican presidents and loved all of the Democrat presidents? There's a reason. It's called ideology, and it's the same ideology for both of them.
And this is a key point because you have seen Venezuelans and you see them on social media. They go, Trump is exactly like Hugo Chavez because
Yeah.
Trump is a populist and, Trump is a strong man. And so there is, remember when people are looking at America from the outside, they often have a somewhat narrow or
Mhm.
even distorted perspective.
Right.
And then you step in and point out, no, this is not a matter. Yeah, there's populism of very many different stripes, but the ideology is what unites the Democrats
That's
and the
right.
left on the one hand with the Chavistas on the other.
The ideology, the tactics, the policies, they're all the same. And I try to point that out to these people. It's like, guys, no. Look at what you're saying. Look at what Trump wants for America and Americans, and look what the Democrats want for America and Americans. Which one of those is exactly like the left in Venezuela?
Well, what I find interesting, and this actually is very personal to you, is that you have campaigned over the past all the years I've known you, which is now about 10. On two causes, right? One of them is like alerting the Venezuelans, and there are a lot of them in America, a lot of them in Miami and in Florida, to the similarities between the Maduro regime and the left in this country. That's project number one. And project number two is alerting the Mexican American Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley to the fact that the Democrats are not their friends. And the fact that the Democrats have kept them poor,
Mhm.
and that the Democrats are only allies of the poor as long as they agree to stay poor and vote for the Democratic Party. But what I think is remarkable is that you're seeing a lot of success on both fronts. The Venezuelans have swung to the right and are now almost as MAGA as the Cubans, if not more. And then similarly, there is a real shift occurring in the Rio Grande Valley. Now, our friend Mayra Flores, and we supported her campaign, and she lost, but she lost by a pretty narrow margin. And I remember Mayra saying very poignantly to us, she's like, the red wave is coming. She goes, but I don't know if it's here. I don't know if it's strong enough to sort of save me. And it wasn't strong enough to save her, at least not in the last election. But that doesn't mean that the trend isn't,
Mhm.
consistently rightward.
Yeah.
So you must feel, maybe you want it to go faster, but it is very gratifying to see that on both fronts, your projects are
Mhm,
coming to
mhm.
fruition.
Well, I mean, really, look, in regards to Venezuela, obviously I want to see a free Venezuela, because I do believe that a free Venezuela is great for America. I mean, I do think having Venezuela as an ally is great, and it's also a place where enemies cannot camp out. Russia can't shoot missiles from Venezuela. China can't. Iran can't. But as long as Venezuela is in the hands of Maduro and the leftist regime, you better believe they can, and you better believe they will. So I still stand by that. And so my quest is not just obviously because I want to see the family that I still have left in Venezuela not die of, starvation and no opportunity and all those things. Yeah, that's a little bit, I'm biased, I guess you can say. But I also want to see a free Venezuela because it's good for America. And when it's all said and done, I love this country. I love America. And I don't want to see our enemies camp out 1,300 miles from our border, from our shores.
Yeah. To see Venezuela turned into a playground for the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese. And when we say playground, we're not talking about some kind of, written pact. We're talking about Iranians serving in the Venezuelan parliament. We're talking about an active Russian and Chinese and Iranian presence in the country. MyPillow is excited to announce they are extending the mega sale on overstock, on clearance, and also on brand new products. This is your chance to grab some incredible deals on some of MyPillow's most popular and newly released items. For example, save $40 on the new spring MyPillow bed sheets, available in any size and any color. We use these. These luxurious sheets are designed for maximum comfort and breathability, perfect for a great night's sleep. Looking for a meaningful gift? Save 30% on the brand new My Crosses, inspired by the one Mike Lindell has worn every day for over 20 years. These beautiful crafted crosses come in both men's and women's designs and are proudly made in the USA. Get the 6-piece bath or kitchen towel sets for just $39.98. Initial quantities are limited, so don't wait. And don't forget the best-selling standard MyPillow, now just $17.98. Plus, orders over $75 ship free. Call 800-876-0227. That's 800-876-0227, or go to mypillow.com. And don't forget to use the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh. Let's turn to things happening in America. And in particular,
were you going to bring up the tattoos?
I'm skipping the tattoo. I'm skipping the tattoo guy.
Okay.
And coming straight to Ken Paxton. Attorney General Ken Paxton announces arrest of Houston area abortionist and crackdown on clinics providing illegal abortions. What do you think?
Yeah, well, good for Ken. Good for him. I mean, I'm really happy that he's doing this because these people are trying to skirt around the law.
Right.
They really are. And they really should be held accountable.
Yeah, here we go. The arrest of Maria Margarita Rojas, 48, providing illegal abortions and operating a network of clinics in the Northwest Houston area. So this is not someone who, like, okay, it's a midwife who had a particular one case and they're cracking down on her. She is running
orchestrated
an underground operation of clinics, it seems. And so she's charged with a second-degree felony and also practicing medicine without a license. In the aftermath of, the overthrowing of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, Texas voters cast their ballots to restrict abortion, and to restrict really most abortions. And so what is Ken Paxton doing? He's enforcing the will of the voters of Texas. I mean, nothing could be more democratic than that. And I think what happens with the left is that they think even if the law is the other way, the Republicans just don't have the heart to bring these cases to trial. They're not going to, in fact, enforce the law. They're going to look the other way. Mm. And in fairness, prior to Roe v. Wade, if you look at the history of abortion, there were states in which abortion was legal. Yeah. Was illegal or was restricted under certain conditions, but a lot of those conditions were not enforced. Mm-hmm. And so one of the benefits now, we've gone through this whole wrenching. We had Roe, we had the expansion of Roe, then the overthrowing of Roe. But I think the clarity of states now making their own decisions is that this is the express will of the electorate. And people are part of these self-governing moral communities. Mm-hmm. So I agree. I think it's very good that Paxton is doing this. Do you think that Paxton is going to, I know there's been some reports about Ken Paxton maybe running for the Senate against Cornyn. That would be really interesting because what we have with Cornyn is a guy who is, I think, more liberal than the state that he represents.
He's definitely not on a lot of issues, he goes, if not neutral, slightly left.
Right. He's
left
not
of
Ted
center.
Cruz.
No, he really isn't. Not only that, but I mean, I think his time has come. I do.
He's been there a long time.
Yeah, he's been there a long time. Of course, we're friends with Ken Paxton, so that's not a surprise. And were he to decide to run, I believe he needs to have a lot of money to run against Cornyn, because he is an incumbent, and he has kind of been in Texas in politics really for a very long time, and he raises a lot of money. He's very good at that. And we do have a lot of soft, kind of right of center, maybe I would say, billionaires in Texas that are not super MAGA and that do like Cornyn and would support Cornyn. So there's that money. But I do think that Ken Paxton would put his money where his mouth is, and I think he would be a very strong senator for the state of Texas.
My reading on these Texas billionaires is that they were all riding high when George W. Bush was in power, because Texas at that time, and even earlier when Bush was the governor, Texas sort of had a right of center coalition, but it was more of a business coalition. It was not a cultural coalition. It was not built around pro-life or any of that. And so a lot of these sort of center-right Texas billionaires were, first of all, not only benefiting directly from the business climate, but they felt socially comfortable with it. Trump is a little bit of a wrecking ball, and we've seen this ourselves with people we know who, in one case, a prominent Texas billionaire, in fact, somebody who allowed us to use his house in one of our films, was reluctant to endorse Brandon.
He didn't endorse
Brandon, but a lot of it was because of Trump.
That's right.
The big strike against Brandon was that Brandon was endorsed by Trump.
And that Brandon believed some of the things that Trump believes.
That's right.
So
Brandon is very MAGA. Right. Brandon is all for, closing the border, deportations, that whole thing.
Right.
Now, with regard to Paxton, I think the key factor for him is going to be the Trump endorsement, right? Because that endorsement could very well carry that race. Of course, Paxton needs to have enough money to contest the primary, and the election will be determined most likely in the primary. But I think the Trump endorsement will be key.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about these astronauts coming out of space. Elon Musk brings them back, and
oh my gosh, the propaganda behind this is huge. And let me tell you the propaganda.
Yeah, what is
it?
So
what I mean by the propaganda is that there's this push to say, oh, these astronauts were not abandoned. Biden didn't abandon them. The Biden administration didn't abandon them. It was because of this, and this, which could have happened under any administration, right? So that's kind of like they're pushing that out.
So they're giving the 12 reasons why these people were stuck in space, and it was nothing particularly out of the ordinary.
No, and what should have been 8 days turned into 9 months. And what I found when I found this article was, oh my gosh, what the human body endures in this time in space. First of all, they forget how to walk. They cannot walk. When they come back, you know how you feel when you fly for 15 hours on an airplane and you get out off the airplane and you're like, and that's just an airplane.
Right.
That's not in space,
Right.
But can you imagine no gravity, and then you come back to gravity and you're like heavy again?
Right.
You now weigh like.
You were talking about how your tongue.
Oh yeah, their tongue goes numb or something. They don't feel their.
You don't control your tongue.
No,
it begins to
That's
just
right. And I think, and there's another thing that they call baby feet. I don't know if you saw that one.
It talks about baby feet. It talks about dizziness.
Yes.
They call it weightless tongue.
Yes.
So imagine your tongue having no weight.
So you're like, you can't eat. The other thing that is interesting is that, you know how in space, like when you go on a ride and there's G-forces, a lot of people throw up, like me, for example, because I have air sickness. Well, they get what's called the reverse of that. So when they come back from space and they're into our atmosphere again, they vomit. It's like the
Oh, I
opposite
see.
of that.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of health issues that happen.
Well, I also read this in a slightly different way, which is as a validation of the anthropic principle. And here's what I mean. We take for granted the innumerable conditions that have to exist for us to be alive, right? The conditions that have to exist for us to be alive on the earth, and the conditions that have to exist for us to be alive anywhere in the universe at all. In other words, for life to exist in our universe, there has to be a whole set of
laws
and constants, and very improbable things need to happen for any kind of life to exist. So that's the anthropic principle as applied to the universe. But there's a second version of it, which is to say the peculiar suitability of the earth and our atmosphere. And you see it in this example we're just talking about, where you just take human beings and plop them out of the atmosphere, and suddenly nothing seems to function, right? And not to mention, you need elaborate oxygen tanks, and you need all kinds of protective gear, and there's certain
help
types
walking.
right.
Yeah.
In other words, you need an entire infrastructure just to keep you going, and you can't keep going indefinitely.
And these, the other interesting thing is these astronauts don't get paid a lot. I think there's an article that says
Listen
how
to
much.
this.
Yeah.
One of them says that they were being paid about $4 a day. And in fact, I think I saw Trump even
That's like
saying,
jury duty.
Yeah, Trump, exactly, like jury duty, exactly. I think I saw Trump saying, well, you know what, I'll pay them. Because Trump was like, I'll pay them because this is just not right to have people who have families and obviously have people to support, including themselves. And all right, let's turn to
let's do the murders real quick.
Yeah, there are two murders we want to talk about. One, of course, is something we've talked about before, which is Bryan Kohberger. And the other, which I'm going to let you give us the details on, it's called the conjugal murder. Here's the article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The conjugal. Well, first of all, leave it to the state of California.
So the guy was making a conjugal visit.
The woman, right, his wife,
right, shows up for the conjugal visit.
And these conjugal visits are like in apartments. They put these people in an apartment, yes, and they are like 2 or 3 days long. These visits, they're not just like an hour, go in and out. Oh no, they do this because they want to get them used to. Now, this is what I don't understand about this particular case, because he wasn't being rehabilitated. A lot of this is so that they get rehabilitated to be able to live
somewhat like the confinement center.
That's right. So
adapt to civilian life.
But this was not that case, and he was actually in the state prison, Mole Creek State Prison near Sacramento, serving like 4 life sentences. So he was never going to get out.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the case here, right? But she went in and she thought, okay, I want to rehabilitate him. I want him to get an education. I want this. I want that, right? So basically what happened is that this happened at about like 3 a.m. He finally calls, I guess, the guard, and says that she fainted. And this happened in November. So they were waiting report,
So what happened? Did he choke her?
He choked her.
Oh,
He strangled her to death.
Yeah.
And so what does he care? He's spending 4 life sentences. What's one more?
Exactly. You can't add to his sentence, right?
No, but the lunacy of this, I believe, is what should be stopped. Is that the California Department of Corrections, they really should stop this madness, because it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Now, on the Kohberger case,
yeah,
the latest development is, well, 2 things. One is apparently a photo has emerged in which Kohberger, we're talking about the killings in Idaho of the students, and this is the man suspected and accused of the crime. The trial is dragged out so that it's supposed to happen soon, right?
It's been over 2.5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have a selfie that he took apparently hours after the murder.
Yeah.
He looks a bit strange. He's wearing one of those shirts that's buttoned all the way to the top.
White shirt.
And he's kind of giving a thumbs up sign.
He is.
And he's by himself, apparently.
And the interesting thing that I got from that photo, well, two things. One, he's standing in front of a shower.
Right.
A la Psycho. Okay?
You think it's an actual allusion to that? Well, he's a criminologist. He studied criminology,
exactly.
So he'd be very familiar with that.
Exactly. So it's in front of a shower, and the shower apparently has no curtain. Another weird thing, right? So that's one, right? That kind of like I'm bragging. You know, look what I just got away with.
Look what I did.
Look what I did. The other thing is that his defense says that he is autistic. And therefore, he has no emotion. And so if he walks into the courtroom and he looks at you with no emotion, that's because of his autism, right? So don't read into it that he's a mass murderer. He's simply autistic. Well, in this selfie, he's clearly smiling. So
he's showing
emotion. Yeah. So if I was the prosecution, I would go, whoa, wait a minute. You're saying he has no emotion. And that he walks into a courtroom and he looks at you with piercing eyes, but he can take selfies and smile when he's taking a selfie, not to mention a little thumbs up here and there. So again, that is like, I think that they should shoot that one down.
What do you think is the point of claiming that he reveals no emotion? Is it that they don't want the jury to see him as a monster?
Yeah, it's because when he walks into the courtroom, he's got this like weird look on his face, and so the defense doesn't want the jurors to read into that look, and so
it is interesting the degree to which, I have to say, this is, I think, true, that one's looks as an accused murderer do make a big difference. So, for example, Bundy was a pretty good-looking guy, right? Some of the other serial killers, I mean, they look like serial killers. They look the part. Yeah. Manson looked the part.
Well, you remember with Bundy, the women that would go to the courtroom were simply going just to see him.
There was a
like a little fan club.
He had a female fan club, right? That's right.
I don't see him having one, fan club, but anyway.
He's too strange to do that.
Really sad.
All right.
Yeah.
We're running close on time. Let's pick up on something that's really puzzled you. Puzzles me too, although not quite as much. This is the millennial saint.
Yes.
This is very interesting. This kid, his name is Acutis, Acutis, Carlo Acutis, Italian kid. He died of cancer at the really very young age of 15, but he was evidently a very devoted Catholic Christian. He built these websites where he would showcase what he would call the miracles of the Eucharist. He apparently came to the attention of the Pope, who used him as a kind of example of how young people can use media to promote the church. And now they have canonized him. And you were describing to me how, they not only had this kind of magnificent canonical ceremony and ceremonial mass, but there are now all these like shrines and artifacts, and this kid
toys
died at 15, and he was in 2006.
Yeah, they have these.
So he's the only millennial saint.
Yes.
I mean, it kind of makes you laugh a little bit, the idea of a millennial saint.
And at the when they canonized him, his parents were there and his siblings. And so that was kind of interesting. They did that in 2020.
Yeah.
And supposedly in April, I think it's April 27th of this year, they're going to actually do it. They're gonna what is it?
They're gonna have the formal canonization. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole thing is a complicated process.
Yeah. I'm not Catholic, so that's why I think it's very strange. But
I was raised Catholic, and I'm familiar with it. I think, when most Catholics think about saints, they think about, Francis of Assisi, who, was the missionary who went to Japan and the Far East. I think of Joan of Arc.
But
In
see
other
how
words,
long ago that was.
long time ago, but not only that, but these were like historically transformational figures. I mean, the Christianity would not have made its way to certain parts of the world were it not for Francis.
Well, they're claiming that him also, because he used the internet to do that.
Yeah, well, you showed me
To
yesterday
spread
an interview with his mom,
Mhm.
and she was talking about the fact that he had a big impact on not only a lot of people, but on her. And she made a very strange statement. She goes, he's my son, but she goes, in some ways, he's like my father. And
Yeah.
she meant spiritual father,
Yeah.
of course. And what she meant was that he carries with him, at the age of 15 or even younger, a certain spiritual authority.
Yeah.
Now, you and I were talking about the issue of miracles because we do not believe, in fact, I don't think Catholics in general believe that miracles are done by human beings. No.
Mhm.
So when the church says, and they do say, by the way, you cannot be canonized without, I think, at least one and ideally
miracles.
2 miracles.
Yeah.
And they're claiming that there are 2 miracles, but the miracle here is not like Carlo Acuti doing a miracle. It is God choosing this particular human vessel. Just like, for example, obviously God chose Elijah to strike the rock and water came out, and God chose Moses, right? So Moses wasn't doing any miracles on his own power.
But
God was acting through Moses.
But I said, well, that's interesting because he died of leukemia at the age of 15. That could have been a great miracle if he had lived, right?
Right, but I also think it is true that with all these saints, the miracle is always a very like targeted event, right? And many times the miracle doesn't save the person who did the miracle. Moses, for example, did miracles, but Moses never made it to the promised land. So Moses dies, and it says God himself buries Moses outside the promised land. So God is basically saying to Moses, I'm going to use you as an instrument,
As a vessel.
but hey, I'm not doing you any favors. You're not going to be the ruler of the Israelites.
Yeah. No. It was a very interesting little story. I thought we could end with that.
Yeah. A millennial saint.
A millennial saint.
Who knew?
Next Gen Z. Maybe not.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.